she's an LCSW, and I'm like, how are you authorized to teach me about investing as a social worker? So then I dug into her and I found out she's like one of the people who does their a lot of financial training around like with from a very holistic social work sort of lens, right? You know, taking into consideration that biopsychosocial. So like
Mm.
I say the difference between like social work psychology and psychiatry sort of, and this is like very like minimizing it. So don't take this as a, you know what I mean? Psychiatrists, I feel like are more it's a lot of interest in prescribing medication, things like that. And I'm kind of reduced, it's kind of reductionist, but also with psychologists, it's more cognitive, like what's going on in between your ears, as opposed to social work, which is, you know, what's going on between your ears, but then what's going on at work, what's going on at home, what's going on, you know, in all these facets of your life. That's why we talk about a sort of biopsychosocial framework. So think about learning about personal finance or recovering from financial trauma, but doing it um, in sort of like a therapist sort of environment, a therapeutic environment, you know, where somebody's not judging you, somebody's there. And so how I got here, so I'm certified in financial social work, and that's why I shared the story about the LinkedIn Learning because I didn't know it was a thing. That's when I learned about it. So I dug into some programs. I found that there's actually a center for financial social work, and then there's a certificate you can get also at the University of Maryland. I think it's College Park. They offer it too, but it's only offered like certain times during the year, and they don't always offer it if there's low enrollment. So, but anyways, I went to the Center for Financial Social Work, got the training there, and it's just been fantastic to be able to help people in this context because I'm all about personal finance, just because of my personal situation and things that I'm going through right now, and I'm sort of training myself to be the therapist that I wish I could have had going through all this hardship. Um, you know, so trying
Mm.
to be that person for
Okay, so a financial social worker. I now never heard that term before. I've heard a financial therapist. Now, tell me about is there a difference between a financial therapist and a financial social worker? And also, because my wife is a therapist and a social worker, also, right? So, so is there a difference? And then also, tell me more about financial social work. Like, how would you define that? You know, like in a couple minutes, kind of thing.
So if I was to make a distinction between a social worker and a therapist, so social workers can be therapists. In fact, most of the therapists in the country are social workers. They provide the most mental health counseling.
Mm.
They're the most accessible also, but and there are more of us. But you don't have to be a therapist if you're a social worker. You could be a macro practitioner. You can go work in Harrisburg or wherever state capital you're at, and you can do a bunch of other things. You can be a medical social worker at a hospital, that sort of thing. So, what is financial social work? So, financial social work is, in a way, for me, a way to help people who are traumatized in the workplace and who may be looking for entrepreneurial opportunities.
Mm.
People who are working through complex family issues. You know what I mean? So there's a couple I'm working with now where an uncle is being a holdout for and doesn't want and wants to sell a house that everybody else wants to keep in the family just to be spiteful. You know, so there's a lot to navigate there, and there's a lot of group and family therapy that's involved in a situation like that as well. And also just breaking generational curses. You know what I mean? What does it mean to not sell grandma's house? You know what I mean? What does it mean
Mm.
to have to and supporting people who are doing like estate planning for uh you know loved ones, people who are caring for aging parents. That's another group of people who are like really not supported. And these each of these have financial implications with all of them. You know, some people just aren't ready to care for aging parents and then understanding like what it means from a financial standpoint because there's a
Mm.
huge burden and unforeseen expenses that come up, a lot of paperwork that needs to be handled, and a lot of resources that you can connect your parents to that people may not know about. You know, you don't know what you don't know. And so that's also being that liaison to connect people with resources in the community that could be helpful for them. So
Mm.
financial social work is it's not just the therapy piece and helping with like, you know, the stress, the anxiety and the depression around, you know, with the onset of like not having enough money or not being as financially just not being as efficient as you can as you can could be uh, financially, and this causes stress. So a lot of times we also do things like optimization. And everybody isn't always a good, wouldn't be necessarily need therapy to take part with these services, but they could also do coaching. So I do coaching.
It's interesting because it's almost like like you go through so many things that it's almost like people should be trained and prepared for this stuff, and they're not. Like you get to that point in your life where I know they have that thing, I think that was called the sandwich generation, like people in a certain age group where you're taking care of kids but you're also taking care of aging parents. And when people are not financially prepared or emotionally prepared, they just don't it's hard. It's really, really hard, because on one hand, the kids need you like crazy. Maybe you're even married and your spouse needs you, and your boss needs you, and then your parents need you, right? So you kind of got all this stuff hitting you, and that's all super expensive, and so it seems to me that there should be more conversations about that, because you're right. People, I mean, that financial burden, it just body slams a lot of people. And if you're in your, say, 40s and 50s, and you're supposed to be saving for retirement and all that, but you got all these immediate needs that are just draining all your resources, it just becomes a really difficult thing to resolve, right?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And so, all these things hit you all at one time at like a ton of bricks. And it's also, it can be a very isolating experience for a lot of people, especially those who are like an only child. Fortunately, I have my sister, and
Mm.
we're really tight. She helps me. But our parents need a lot of support, you know what I mean? So I don't know what I would do if I didn't have her, you know what I mean? But also
Mhm.
to speak to another point, something else you just said, Dr. Boyce, I think this should be something that people learn, and that's why, like you said, we have to be the solution to our issues. If this is a problem and people need to be educated on it, then it's up to us to do that for our community, right? So I do a personal finance training for or workshop for one for middle school and high school students, and one of my slides, I talk about the reasons why personal finance isn't taught in schools, right? And there's a laundry list of reasons. All of them are horrendous, right? They don't make any sense to anybody who's a rational thinking person. But
Mhm.
the reason why they don't teach it because it's that's the intention. They want us in debt. They want us to be, employees,
Mhm.
for life. You know what I mean? They want us to be in debt. And you need these type of people to make a capitalist system like this work, or laissez-faire capitalist system like this work. Where
Right.
it's exploitation and theft of labor value, as opposed to
Mm.
being efficient in that way. So
Yeah,
I'll leave
I
it.
no, well, I mean, I agree with you. I mean, I think that it's almost like I think that we somehow make the mistake of believing that the government cares about us. You know, that's a really bad assumption for anybody to make, especially Black people. There's not a lot of evidence to say that they do, and to some extent, it's I think that we have to really think about what it means. I mean, what one thing we do every morning is we do what we call economic consciousness exercises, or just awareness, right? And almost like meditating on certain realities, right? So one reality I would encourage everybody to meditate on is the fact that there is, when you are a commodity in a society, like I think Black people definitely are, really human beings are. In a capitalist society, you're not seen so much as a human being. You're seen really as a commodity, an asset, something that can be moved around and traded, and kind of where value can be extracted from your existence. Whether you're talking about a young kid in the prison system, or you're talking about a worker who gets up and goes to work for their boss every day, or a consumer who is manipulated into buying things at the store so other people can get rich. So when you're a commodity, you have to understand just sort of how you're viewed by the people that are at the top of the economic food chain. And so if I am taking care of you and you're happy that I'm taking care of you, but you're talking about the people at the top of the food chain, it becomes one of these things where you have to be really careful because they're taking care of you in a specific way for a specific purpose. So, for example, if I'm a chicken on a farm And the goal of the farmer is to pack up all the chickens and take us to KFC so that they can eat us up or sell us. Um, then yeah, they're gonna feed me good. My life is gonna be nice and easy. And I'm gonna say, wow, this farmer's really, he's really looking out for my best interest. He's hooking me up, and but he's hooking me up for not because he cares about my well-being. He's hooking me up because he needs me to be fat and ready to be fed to somebody else. That's different from, say, the way my mother might take care of me. My mother wants me to be to just be good. She wants me to be healthy, safe, and prosperous. The farmer just needs me to be fat so that he can sell me and make money for me. The minute I don't fit that agenda anymore, I become useless to him. And so the public school system to me kind of operates in the same way, that they give you this thing called education, and we say thank you so much for this education, but that education really is, it's a training slash indoctrination that prepares you to fulfill a specific purpose, to fit into a specific system. So if you make the mistake of believing that they're giving you this education because they really care about you and they want you to live this wonderful life, that's a very bad assumption. The only people that are going to really want you to live a good life and care about you on that level is you. Maybe if you're lucky, you have some people in your family that care about you at that level, but that's it. So I think there should be like sort of two views of education. There's the education that the government gives us, that's training slash indoctrination, where there can be some benefit to that for sure. But then there's like the real education, where the goal of that education is maximizing my life, putting me in a good position where I'm going to be able to get what I need, and care, and that benefits the people, myself and the people around me. So that might include some of the things that you're talking about, like being trained on just how to have enough resources so I can make sure I take care of my aging mother and the children, and be a good husband and father, and be a wealth builder. Ain't none of that in public school. None of that. Those are easy classes. You could really literally teach it. I imagine if every black boy got a class on how to be a good husband, or how to be a good dad. Every black girl got a class on how to be a good mother, how to be a great wife, how to keep the family together, conflict resolution skills, emotional intelligence. That would go a long way, don't you think?
Yeah, absolutely, Dr. Boyce. And that's why I try to follow your example and, create our own institutions where we can do this work. You know what I mean? Because I'm not a proponent of neoliberalism. In fact, I say neoliberalism is where movements go to die. So I cannot do the work that I do as part of another institution where I'm getting paid. You know what I mean? I just
Yeah.
can't do that. So we have to create our own spaces to do these things to educate our people. So, and like
Yes.
you said, maybe brag a little bit. I don't want to go too ham, but I started it's on its way to a nonprofit. You might have saw it when I was off screen, but it was called the Dynamic Justice Collective. I'll send you guys a link. But in with that organization, we do a lot of trainings around uh, financial therapy or finances, personal finance, for mostly for young people. We target with that. Just because we want to get them started early, how to write a check, what is interest, what is bank, why is it important to have a bank account as opposed to going into, because a lot of them, they got their first little job and they want to go to check cash and pays. Okay, well, here's why you need to have a bank account. You know what I mean? Getting into the habit of banking, credit unions instead of using check cashing places and things like that. Just simple things. And also we do community and organizational processes. So our whole goal is to uh, remove ourselves from oppressive systems. So if people in the community have a dispute, instead of calling the police, instead of having the courts involved or the cops involved or the judges and jails and prisons involved, how about we sit around and have a circle, a restorative justice circle, and we can work this out ourselves, where nobody has to leave the community, nobody else is harmed, but the person who caused the harm the person who was harmed and the person who causes harm get to sit in the same space, and then they get to share it, how their point of views and how things affect how the conflict impacted them. So that restorative justice, the trainings, we do youth cohorts in schools and things like that. And we just kicked off a project called Project Equity. Now, Project Equity, this is about keeping the most vulnerable among our people in their homes. So we're talking about elderly people, we're talking about families, because there are a lot of developers here in Philly, and there are a lot of also predatory lenders who go around and get people who got people, a lot of people into subprime mortgages way back in 2007, 2008. And I was one of the people that did a lot of the housing counseling to get people's mortgages remodified with Harrisburg. So because of that work, that influences the work I do now. And also just trying to, there's so many of the older people I meet, they don't even have homestead exemption because they don't know about it. You know what I mean? So somebody has to be out here getting them connected to those resources and things like that. So it has to be us. So like I said, just following your example, Dr. Boyce, just like creating our own institutions. I started a consultancy as well, but that's an LLC, and that's for collecting reparations. So I target like bigger, for that.
Okay, well,
my community work, the community always gets me through Dynamic Justice Collective. That's not about money. That's just about being of service.
all right. Well, everybody, this is Ken Peoples, and Ken Peoples has a background in social work, financial social work, and he's our guest for today. And so one of the things I wanted to mention or bring up, Ken, was I'd like to ask you about this. I'm going to read a list of 5 signs of emotional intelligence. And I think this is something that we can meditate on in terms of knowing if we're emotionally intelligent. In fact, give me a yes or no in the chat. Yes or no. Do you consider yourself to be an emotionally intelligent person? Yes or no. How many of you consider yourselves to be emotionally intelligent? How many of y'all feel like, God is still working on you? You got a ways to go. I know that emotional intelligence, I feel like it's a journey. Not all of us are where we want to be. A lot of us make bad decisions because of emotions. Maybe we get really mad at somebody that we care about and we say something that we regret. All of us have done that. I'm sure at some point. Maybe financially, you go and you buy something that you regret buying later on. You got some buyer's remorse. Maybe you didn't have. Maybe emotionally, you were invested in a stock and you saw your stocks drop, so you got scared and you sold too early. So I think emotional intelligence is a journey for everybody. So I don't think anybody's perfect there, but there are varying degrees of this, and I think this should be discussed more. So I'm going to give 5 signs of emotional intelligence. I want you to process this, and then Ken, I'd like for you to comment on this list. Number 1 is empathy for others' feelings, and then I want to ask you as I say this. Do you think that we have a society where empathy is really encouraged? Like, do you think that we have a society where you're encouraged to consider how other people feel? And also, do you feel that this would make you better in your outcomes in life, your relationships, the way you do business, everything else? Putting yourself in somebody else's shoes. What do you think? Do you think our country would be better if we had more of that empathy? Number 2, self-awareness of emotions, knowing how you feel, processing that, understanding why you feel that way, right? I'm really mad right now because and I'm kind of hurt because, well, again, do we encourage that kind of depth, or do we live kind of on the shallow surface? I think the world's a little bit shallow in that area. I don't think self-awareness is as great as it should be. Number 3, effective stress management. Ways to manage stress that are effective and also healthy, right? Instead of turning to the crack pipe or the liquor bottle, or overindulging in food or sex or whatever it is that helps me to relieve stress, maybe finding some healthy ways to deal with that, healthy coping mechanisms like meditation, deep breathing, exercise, things like that. Number 4, constructive conflict resolution. Can you imagine how great our world would be if people sought first to reconstruct relationships as opposed to destroy them? Like, I have a conflict with you, rather than me beating you up, escalating it, and cussing you out and going off on you. My goal is to actually resolve the conflict and be constructive in our conversation. And the 5th sign of emotional intelligence would be great interpersonal relationships. So what if every time I talk to you, my goal was to make your life better and to be a good friend to you, to be a good relative to you, as opposed to what you see a lot in the society, which is a lot of narcissism and it's all about me, stuff like that. So Ken, I read that list. It's not exhaustive. Give me your commentary, your thoughts on some of that.
Okay, so in terms of empathy, I think empathy is a superpower. And not only that, but I believe that, because I think your question around empathy was, do you feel like that there's a aura of empathy? I'll say yes and no. Yes, in my community with my ALites, but in terms of America in general, absolutely not. I think it's just a rugged individualism, dog eat dog, and love. That's why it's really important for us to build community amongst one another. In terms of self-awareness, yes. looking within, taking that time to step away, being in tune with yourself, being in tune with your thoughts, understanding yourself, understanding your motivations, taking the time to sit and process and understand where certain feelings might be coming from, where certain thoughts might be coming from, and just understanding what it is you want and moving intentionally, right?
Mm.
So that's what I think about when I think of self-awareness. In terms of effective stress management, listen, I think Dr. Boyce said everything you need to say with that one. Just healthy coping skills. So like meditation, um, also eating good, eating healthy, eating nutritious food. You know what I mean? Staying away from all the sugar, staying away from all the fat. Um, Exercising regularly. And Dr. Boyce also said deep breathing, which uh, I can't recommend enough. It's something that I implement into my everyday life. Actually, I use the Dr. Will 478 breathing technique. I do it twice a day.
Mm.
In terms of constructive conflict resolution, this is what I work around. A lot of the young people I work with. It's all about conflict resolution. We can't get anywhere if we can't resolve conflict, because conflict is going to happen no matter what. It's inevitable. So but it's how we handle it and how we move on from it, how we repair that matters, right? So a lot of times I like to talk to people about, just like the upstairs brain, the downstairs brain, and then just like what it means to behave impulsively and what it means to have delayed gratification, and then just wait and just see how things play out. You know what I mean? But to not be impulsive and to just, it can be hard. And like I said, it's a sliding scale in terms of emotional intelligence. So everybody may not have the slider all the way up to 100, where you're just like 100% zen, emotionally intelligent, like, you know what I mean? But something that you have to keep working on. And then in terms of interpersonal relationships, so again, I think a lot of this feeds into that last one. So if you're an empathetic person, if you are in tune with yourself, you have really healthy coping skills, really good emotional self-regulation skills. You're good at uh, uh, navigating conflict and healing and repair. I think interpersonal relationships would be something that really comes easy for you.
Yeah, and it helps you do basic things like make more money. You
Right.
know, I mean, I like to keep things simple, Ken, and I see that list and I say, okay, I get it. It's those five things that we mentioned are um it's basically training on how to not be an asshole.
Right.
And if you're not an asshole, then people will want to be around you. They'll want to work with you. They'll want to partner with you. They'll want to marry you. They'll want to do business with you. They'll seek you out. And when you see people that are off balance, like somebody who lacks empathy, who wants to be around somebody who doesn't care how anybody else feels except for themselves?
Right. I
Nobody like
wouldn't
that.
enter a business deal with you if that's the type of person you
Yeah, I'm not gonna do a business deal with you.
are.
I'm sure as hell not gonna date you. And I don't want to be your friend. And this goes back to childhood. I still remember I had a friend who was just spoiled. His mama used to buy him everything, and he was also a good athlete and stuff, and he was like a jerk and a bully and just dismissive of everyone. And we could not stand this dude. Like he was. I feel like every friend group, when you're like 8 years old, every friend group has those one or two people where you're like, dude, we don't even like you, but you're just with us. We all get on our bikes and ride together. But if you wasn't here, the world would be a better place. Almost like that Eric Cartman character. you know, and so to me, it's like though I love that list because it also another thing that came to mind was when you talk about the wealth destruction through just the deterioration of the community through things like urban violence, and you think about what Philly is dealing with in that area. Chicago, we're similar. I think that part about conflict resolution so essential, not just in terms of preserving life and preserving freedom, keeping brothers from going to prison, but you're also talking about wealth preservation as well. It's hard to build wealth when a lot of your young people are getting shot up and going to jail. Any
Right.
thoughts on that in terms of your experience in dealing with that? Because I know you're in Philly, which is I keep up with Philly, man. There's so many terrible things happening there, but a lot of good things too. But some
Right.
things that are disturbing. You have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the the issues that we have in the city, and it's not just Philly, it's urban centers all over the country, right? Where I mean, there's I mean, people may look at it. I mean, there's a lot of pathology, there's a lot of violence, there's a lot of struggling economically. There aren't enough jobs going around. And I just think in things are going to get really I think before things get better, probably going to be it's probably going to be rough for a little while, and just in the states as a whole, just looking at what's going on geopolitically. But in terms of what you were saying, in terms of like people going like anytime you remove somebody from the community, that's one person that could be earning an income for their family. That's one man that could be earning some, helping his family out. But instead, he's going to prison to engage in labor activities and get paid a pittance for whatever corporation, right? So that labor value goes away from our community and then goes and helps the state, which created conditions to get this young man put in jail in the first place. You know what I mean? So I think it's just the system is really working as it is intended, and us being in these spaces and having these conversations is basically it is us brainstorming ways that we can intervene and do something to intervene and do something about this, because I just feel like in terms of like our community and in terms of like wealth building, we have such a counterinsurgency like inside of our community. We don't own and control a lot of our own resources, like our cultural resources. We don't, and a lot of times we've been shut out of opportunities to build generational wealth. And at the same time, we're also, there's a lot of trauma around that. And so some people can self-medicate, some people. And so I'm sorry, Dr. Boyce, I kind of lost your question. So I'm kind of rambling, but
No, it's
I'm
okay.
kind of just talking right now. I probably need to get your question again. I'm sorry.
Oh no, don't worry about the question. I forgot it too. In fact, actually, that's what I do sometimes every morning. I'll just ramble. It's a stream of consciousness. I'll just go and I'll just start talking about whatever comes to mind next, and I think that's okay. I think that that's leaning on your subconscious mind to guide you to the things that you are passionate about. And actually, as you were speaking, one thing that I thought about too, when you talk about just that drain when you're losing your young people and people are getting killed, going to prison. And then remember this too, that not only are you losing wealth from the person who dies, you lose wealth from the person who goes to prison, but then also you're traumatizing the people who are connected to those individuals or that incident, right? If I sit here and I watch my older brother get shot in the head, I'm not right. So now I become whatever asset to the community or to my family I was going to be, that's in jeopardy, because now I can't really function properly because I've got this undiagnosed, untreated trauma, because I'm just told to man up and get over it, but I'm freaking out and engaging in all these unhealthy coping mechanisms to deal with that. So it's like a virus. It really becomes like a virus, and I want everybody to kind of visualize what it looks like when you have the opposite of the virus. All right, let me tell you about this true story. Just last night, I sat with a student and who did a consultation with me, and we were going through her portfolio. She has about $1 million in wealth, and I wanted to hear her story. And she told me about her father who died about 20 years ago, and her father was a very hardworking man who had a farm, and he bought all this land, and he trained his kids. He said, "Don't ever sell this land." He had a bunch of heads of cattle, and that's how he built his wealth. And also, he set up family trusts and incorporation. Again, an average man, wasn't a PhD or an attorney or like even a college graduate, but he was a hardworking man that loved his family, who was in a position mentally to visualize. He had a consciousness level to literally tell his children, "I'm gonna take care of you from the grave." And she said, and that's what we're doing. She said, "My daddy is taking care of us from the grave." We make money 20 years after his death because he was sort of built in that sturdy sort of way. where he made the long-term plan and he executed the long-term plan. He set up he worked with the lawyer to set up the trust and incorporation, and he put all the land in the trust. And she said, oh yeah, when he passed, we paid about $500 in taxes on hundreds of thousands of dollars in assets that my father worked hard and left for us. And he also used to tell us about how many families lose their wealth because they don't make a plan. And this was not a guy who ever took a finance class. He didn't have a college degree, but he understood the basics, and so I want everybody to imagine what if he was on crack, right? What if this man had been shot in a drive-by? What if he was just so messed up in the head through trauma and whatever that he just didn't function? What if he just was a professional baby daddy who just splattered a bunch of kids all around the country and didn't take care of any of them? Imagine where his daughter would be now. Do you understand? So what I want you to see is I want you to see the extremes. And then Ken, you can jump in and comment on that however you like, but because I'm not even gonna frame it as a question because we're just talking here. We're just two brothers talking. But I want everybody to see those extremes. Like what happens when you take someone or something. Every boy, every child, every girl in our community has the potential to be a tremendous asset to others. Every single child that is born in our community is a multi-million-dollar opportunity for the community. Now, and I'm not even just talking about the money. I'm talking about all the other things too, right? Every single time. And when you have millions of your kids that get lost or those opportunities are wasted, that's how you get a poor community. Because poor stands for what? Passing over opportunities repeatedly. So every time you give birth to a black baby, that is your opportunity to do something amazing. But you got to pour into that baby as much as you pouring into your boss. We got to invest in these kids as much as you investing in that shitty ass excuse my French, that damn corporation that you're invested in. You got to invest in your children as much as you investing in the landlord, invest in your kids as much as you investing in the car dealer. If you do that, then your children will become the assets that God meant for them to be instead of having this wasteland of missing opportunities. I'm done. I said too much. Ken, please.
Okay. Dr. Boyce, you said so much. There's so much I want to comment on. So the first thing I'll say, I'll preface this by saying, talking because you said something about, therapy, especially for our community in general. I do another workshop on like ancestral trauma, and just I encourage all my people to please go to therapy. Even if you don't think you need to go or you don't think you'll get anything out of it, just go, just see what it's like. You know what I mean? And also do a workshop on destigmatizing therapy. Listen, 1965 rolled around and, we had another great migration, people looking for family members, right? We didn't have any therapists, any social workers, anybody there to help us deal with the trauma that we had just been through. You know what I mean? We're still passing that down and carrying that generation after generation. And we still have like contemporary stress and trauma that we have to deal with, racial trauma that we have to deal with today. You know what I mean? On top of the ancestral trauma. So please, I encourage everybody to do what you can to heal. You know what I mean? Because we have to. Second, God bless this man that you just told me about, Dr. Boyce, who set up everything. And I love trust. I just learned about these in 2020 because I had to out of necessity. And I love trust 100%. And I think that dovetails nicely into you mentioned estate planning. And this part is so incredibly important because I see so many times, and in the work that I'm doing now, I see a lot of times where families, somebody passes away who owned the home, but nobody then changes title to another person, or things like that. And a lot of things, which is why I'm really into trust, is what I'm trying to train our community to do is like, stop going to probate. Do not go to probate. We have to make plans to transfer resources from one generation to the next, or just from one person to the next. And you can do that with the trust or a holding company, however you want to do it. There's a bunch of ways around it. I get a lawyer for that. I didn't pass the bar, but we lose so much wealth by not protecting it. And I'll give you a personal anecdote. I feel like my grandparents or the grands in my family did so well to accumulate property, right? But the generation after them, their children, didn't do anything to maintain, or they maintained, but they didn't do anything in terms of legally to keep it in our names legally, right? Or to keep it out of heirs property legally. So my generation is now having to go back and fix everything, and we weren't able to save everything. You know what I mean? And it's heartbreaking for a lot of things, because it's just, if someone just stepped up and did this one thing back then. But we also, like you said, to speak to your other point, Dr. Boyce, we didn't always have somebody who was in position to do that, because it could have been drug abuse. It could have been somebody was arrested. It could have been some other thing that somebody got put up into, where that particular thing was not handled. And so now it falls to us. So now we're the ones who are breaking generational curses. And we're happy to do it. We'll do it again if we have to. But again, it's about preventing this from ever having to happen, and then leaving your kids in a better position than you were in. You know what I mean? Making sure your kids don't have to go through, having to set up a trust, having to educate themselves on this stuff. I mean, it'd be good to educate themselves on this, but like, not out of a place of necessity, but out of a place they can take their time to learn this, as opposed to like, I'm stressed. I'm really stressed because I have to get this paperwork in. I have to fix this stuff. You know what I mean? It's much better to do it instead of doing it under, I don't want to say duress, but it's much better to do it, to learn these things, in a more nurturing educational environment, as opposed to the stress of like a probate, or trying to transfer resources so that they can be saved and not be sold, because there might be something, going on in the background. You know what I mean? So I don't know, Dr. Boyce, I think I said enough about what you spoke on there.
Yeah, well, you're right about estate planning and trust, because when things go through, I talked to an estate planning attorney one time who basically said that the 80% of her law firm's income comes from families that don't prepare. She said if families all prepared for death, that we would not have a law firm, because we make all of our money cleaning up messes in families where nobody thought anybody was ever going to die, so nobody had any plans in place. Yeah, when you go through probate, you're talking about tremendous legal fees, a lot of court costs. You have fees. You have to pay the executor of the estate. You got administrative costs. You have a big time delays. You lose a lot of time. So that means the bills have to be paid during that time, can't be paid. You also lose your privacy, because they can publicly disclose all the information from your estate to anybody who wants to look it up. And then also the IRS then shows up after that. And once the IRS shows up, next thing you know, everything that you work for your whole entire life is gone. So it's very important to think about these things. And I encourage everybody, again, another economic consciousness exercise. Remember, when we do money consciousness every morning, I always remind you, I always want you to be conscious of what it means to be conscious, right? So consciousness means being able to elevate and vibrate on a frequency where you can see far what's ahead. You can see what's out there. Like an airplane that goes above the traffic, you can see things that people in the traffic can't see. So what I want you to be able to do, and I want you to do this, is just meditate and imagine that you died today. Like, imagine you died, like right now, right after this class, you're gone. You can't go back and change anything. You can't go back and share passwords. You can't go back and fix anything. It's like golf. I remember hearing Cat Williams describe playing golf, and he's, how he talks. He talks real slow and methodical. He's a genius. He's really smart. And he was like, golf is a sport where you get one shot to hit the ball, and you have to live with that shot, and then you can only move forward to the next shot. And death is kind of like that too. It makes me think about death, because like just like in golf, when you hit a bad shot, it's in the weeds of the woods. You have to live with it. You can't go back and do it again, right? So when death happens, when the Grim Reaper shows up, and if he takes you unexpectedly, you can't go back and be like, oh, wait, let me go back and make sure that my baby daddy knows where the passwords are so he can get access to the money to pay the rent Tuesday. No, you get no do-overs. So I would encourage you to just sort of imagine what it would mean to be able to have influence beyond the grave, to be able to make sure everything's handled. And just so imagine if you were gone, and just say, okay, would my spouse be able to pay the mortgage? Would they know how to even get to the bank account? Would they know? And these are real stories. I told you all about the story about the guy. I told a story one day, Ken, about, this is a real story about a guy who was in his 50s, and he was kind of a player. and he had this young girlfriend about 32, and he said, don't worry, I'll pay the bills and everything. So he took good care of her. But the problem was that the girlfriend, because she was so much younger than him, she had a bad relationship with his daughter because his daughter was the same age as his girlfriend. So the daughter couldn't stand the girlfriend, but it didn't matter because the dad, that's what the dad wanted, and he took care of her and she lived with him and all that. Well, one day he just has a stroke. He just, guy, men will talk all day about women dying alone. Well, men die alone too. And so anyway, this guy he has a stroke, but he didn't die. He was in a coma. So all the time he was in a coma, her dilemma was, how do I pay the bills with him in a coma? Because he's got all the money. So she broke in his phone, put his face up or whatever, and got into the bank account and took the money out. Now you could say she was stealing from him because it was against he didn't give consent, but if he were alive, he would have given her the money, because he was paying all the bills anyway. So she pulls the money out to pay all the bills, and then after a few weeks, he dies. He literally just dies. And then there's something about death that's so interesting because that's when the state and the government it jumps into your life. At that point, everything becomes like official and illegal, right? So now that he's gone, given that he didn't make any plans for his death, he didn't make any plans for this woman. Again, I believe if somebody loves you, they're gonna make a plan for you. If I don't make a plan for you, then I can't say I care about you. I'm sorry. I hope I didn't offend anybody, but I hope you'll consider what I just said. So he didn't he didn't have any plans because he was gonna be there forever because he's the man. He ain't never gonna die, right? Like a lot of us men think that way. Well, now he's gone. So because he didn't make any plans, guess who inherits everything that he owns? It
Has
ain't
to be
it ain't the girlfriend. It's the
daughter.
daughter.
Yeah, it
The
has to be.
daughter. And the daughter, she's been heated over this relationship for years. So she comes in and first thing she does is she evicts the girlfriend out of the house. Now you're homeless. She's like, now you're homeless, you bitch. That's what she's thinking because she did not like this lady. So she puts her out and then she goes in and investigates and finds out that this lady was taking all this money
Nothing
out
to
of her
say
daddy's
nothing.
account. Oh, now you're about to be arrested. And all this happened, and he would, if he were alive, he would be vehemently against it. But because he made no plan,
Right.
now all hell's broken loose. The daughter owns everything now, and the girlfriend's just out there. So these are the things that can happen with death. And I hope everybody will just kind of hear these stories and just don't let yourself be the next story. Don't have your kids on GoFundMe. That's not cool. So anyway, I want to say thank you, Ken, for hanging out with us today. I appreciate it. Ken, how can people get in touch with you? Where can they go to follow you and participate in what you got going on?
So you can reach me at dynamicjusticecollective.org. I also put my email in the chat. I'll put the link to that organization in the chat. The consultancy, the site is live, not live yet. It's password protected, but it will be up soon. Hopefully, Dr. Boyce, you can share the link once that's up. And
Sure will.
yeah, so it was great. Thanks for having me, everybody. I really appreciate it. I saw the comments going. I mean, you guys are a mile a minute. This chat is live. It's wild over here. But it was great to have. It was great to be with you guys to hang out this morning. And thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. Thanks for letting me into your space.
Yeah, yeah. This is the space of intelligent black people, and I'm gonna tell you these are the black leaders, in my opinion. The B1 people, people who love the community, who are action oriented, and also who want to grow. That's what's gonna get us to the next level. It ain't gonna be no celebrities or athletes or rappers or whatever. It's gonna be people like that. It's not even gonna be the educated class. That's the thing. When it comes to wealth, educated black people actually in many cases have a negative net worth. So it's not all educated black people, but those who have not sort of hit that switch to understand like what wealth is and why it matters and how to obtain it, they're not even adding to our ability to overcome the racial wealth gap. So the people in this room are serious, man. These are just some of the baddest black folks ever, and I think that black leadership should be done by committee. I think all of us, every one of us, is a black leader. Everybody who has a space of influence, everybody that has a family, if you got kids looking up to you, wherever you're at, you're a leader because we literally push forward to address cutting edge economic thinking that allows us to really not just catch up, but we taking the lead, man. We are taking the damn lead, and it's just gonna take some time. But we getting our that Ferrari's moving down the road 150 miles an hour, and it ain't stopping. So thank you so much, Ken. Ken, so everybody got Ken's contact information. Give
But
that website one more time, brother.
people are missing the link in the chat. So I'm gonna put it again here. So hopefully, and Dr. Boyce, I'll just send it to you too, so you could
Okay.
probably just
Yeah, dynamicjusticecollective.org. Was that what it was?
yes.
Okay, I'm gonna type it in. Dynamicjusticecollective.org. Okay. Dynamicjusticecollective.org. Okay. All right. There we go. Dynamicjusticecollective.org. His name is Kim Peoples. So go look the brother up. And I don't know if you have Instagram and all that, Ken. You on the gram?
I'm on the ground. I got a personal one. It's just my travel pictures. I like to travel, but it's only for people I know personally. So you can follow me, Dr. Boyce. And maybe when I come back to the B1 every weekend, I can open it up for everybody.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. The thing is that like people when I thought about like doing stuff on social media, I never thought of life as a separation between the professional me and the real me. I always
Yeah.
want the real, I don't want to have to live that life of pretending to be something different. And sometimes it's confusing and it can distract from the brand a little bit. Like sometimes people get confused and they're like, I thought you were a finance professor. Why are you talking about the NFL? I'm like, because I'm a human being first. That's
And
it.
it's all money related anyway. So
It is. It is. Well, yeah, when you think about most things deep enough, you can eventually find the economic connection because money drives America. But I also just said from the very beginning, I said I don't want to be Mr. Professional all the time on social media.
right.
I want to have fun too. I want to share a joke. I don't want to be Mr. Serious and Mr. Work, work, work. Like I live life. I'm a dad. I'm a husband. I'm a human being. And after we get to know each other as human beings, now let's talk about wealth. Let's talk about all these other things. I mean, the credentials are there. You can go check them. But beyond that, though, I'd really like to connect with you and be your friend and let you know that I care about you. And then we can talk about some other stuff after that, right? So I would encourage you to, consider on your page, whether you create a new platform or not, let people get to know you. I think that we live in an age of authenticity. I don't think you have to pretend at all or hide and in fact, if you really get to where you're just really hiding like the real you or whatever too much, it eventually gets out anyway. It's just, so
Yeah, I think you're right. So I don't think that's what's happening. It's just that uh like I have a personal Instagram and I need to make one for Dynamic Justice Collective. I need to make one for the consultancy. Um, but I just shit post about geopolitics all day. I'm not a good follow, trust me.
Well, you'd be surprised, brother. You'd be surprised, man. So, well, I'm gonna say thank you very much, Ken. Ken Peoples, that's our guest for today. Thank you so much for coming in today, and also everybody. We're gonna be back every morning, 10 a.m. Eastern, for our economic elevation, financial consciousness training. If you'd like to be invited into the private Zoom, and if you are not, don't get an invitation yet, just pull out your phone, text the word morning, MORNING, to the number 87948. If you text morning to 87948, I will send you an invite. And we'll be back tomorrow morning, guys. So have a great day. And thank you all for filling out the survey. If you haven't filled out the survey, the satisfaction survey, please do that because that will really help us to zoom in on how to make this a perfect class. And bring your family and friends. It's free to join the live training. And I can tell from the survey results already that your overwhelming majority of you are elevating economically because you're here. And we're also going to work on that one little piece. I need everybody up in here invested in the stock market. That's the one mandate I'm gonna give you because it's too important for us to miss. So God bless you. Thank you again, Ken. It's great to see you, my brother. And everybody, you have a wonderful day. We'll see you soon. Bye bye.